3i Atlas, PastNowRead, presents another work in our anthology of stories that need to be told. 3i Atlas. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@pastnowread.com. If you like this story, stay tuned each Thursday evening for the next episode. Now, 3i Atlas. Enjoy! I was half asleep when the news ticker scrolled across the bottom of the screen. New interstellar object discovered, no threat to Earth. The press conference replayed on a loop. A NASA spokesperson stood at the podium, smiling too easily. Behind her, the name glowed across the screen in sterile white letters, 3i Atlas. The third interstellar visitor in history, they said, a scientific opportunity, nothing more. I wanted to believe her, but the numbers didn't add up. The orbital plots showed a hyperbolic trajectory, textbook for something not born of our sun. But buried in the footnotes were velocity shifts no one explained. A comet should have a tail. This one didn't. A comet should shed water. This one exhaled carbon dioxide like a machine burning through fuel. And then there were the rumors. A colleague in Chile swore he'd picked up structured radio noise from its coma. Another whispered of a Pentagon briefing that mentioned artificial signatures, the kind of phrase you don't invent lightly. If it was just a comet, why classify the data? Why lock every raw feed behind clearance? Why shut down my editor's request for a simple interview with the mission lead? I killed the TV, but the black screen only reflected my own unease. Out my window, the night sky stretched indifferent, stars scattered like ash across velvet. Somewhere out there, racing closer with each second, was Atlas. Natural or not, it was coming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, already knew the truth. The trick with official data is knowing where to look before they lock the doors. By the time most of the public reports were posted, I'd already copied the raw telescope feeds, not the scrubbed curves they published for school kids and journalists, the real numbers, the static-filled noise where secrets tend to hide. And there it was. Every few hours, buried in the hiss of cosmic background radiation. A pulse, not random, not natural, a sharp, repeating tick, like the beat of a metronome lost in a storm. I replayed it again and again, amplifying, filtering, doubting my own ears. When I sent the file to a friend at the observatory, he laughed. Interference, local radio junk, you're hearing ghosts. Maybe, but then the pulses shifted frequency, climbing in clean mathematical steps, almost like someone testing a channel. That was no ghost. I drafted an article, headline, ready to break the story wide open. Structured emissions detected from 3i Atlas. 10 minutes later, the file vanished from my newsroom drive. My editor called, voice low and tight. This isn't just science anymore, it's classified. Drop it, or we both lose our jobs. I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at my laptop's empty folder, listening to my apartment hum like it suddenly had ears. The silence pressed in until I felt like even breathing too loud would trigger alarms. At midnight, a new message appeared in my encrypted inbox. No sender, just a single line. You're looking at it the wrong way. Don't think comet, think craft. Attached was a string of coordinates pointing to a private relay server in Eastern Europe. I clicked before I could stop myself, and a blurred image filled the screen. It looked like a comet's coma, sure, but with shadows of angles buried inside, faint geometric voids where no dust should linger. Shapes that didn't belong in nature. My phone buzzed with a restricted call. I froze, hand hovering, heart slamming against my ribs. The words from the email echoed in my head like a curse. Not a comet, a craft. And if that was true, it meant someone out there had just turned on the lights. I wasn't the only one watching Atlas. At the observatory, the air felt heavy, as if the walls were eavesdropping. Colleagues spoke in quick bursts, glancing over shoulders before letting words slip. On the official record, Atlas was just another comet, rich in carbon dioxide. Off the record, the story twisted. One researcher leaned close, whispering that the coma's composition ratio was 8:1, CO2 to water. "Impossible," he muttered. "Not unless it formed somewhere no comet should." Another scientist pulled me into a lab, shutting the door as though afraid of microphones. He showed me web images, grainy but unsettling. The coma didn't diffuse like a cloud. Instead, light bent strangely, suggesting hidden structures, as if something geometric lurked inside the haze. Their fear was contagious. Conversations stopped the second doors opened. One postdoc confessed she deleted her data logs at night, terrified her laptop might be seized. Another swore his emails were already being monitored. An older astronomer finally snapped, "Say this out loud and you'll never work again. None of us will." His hands trembled as he spoke, eyes darting to the ceiling as though expecting microphones. I left with their warnings echoing in my skull. Outside, the parking lot lay like dark mirrors, a black SUV idled by the loading bay. At the stairs, footsteps matched mine, then stopped when I stopped. Maybe nothing. Maybe a reminder. Hours later, my phone lit up with a withheld number. A clipped official voice. "You're in over your head. Drop the feeds. Forget what you think you've seen. Consider this your only warning." The line died before I could ask a question. I should have quit. Instead, I dug deeper. That night, a package slid under my apartment door. No return address. Inside, a folder stamped in red. Operation Cold Lantern. Grainy satellite stills. Infrared. Ultraviolet. Each spectrum showed the same impossible truth. Atlas wasn't just venting gas. It was releasing directed bursts of energy. Sharp, timed, deliberate. If it was a comet, it was the strangest one in the universe. If it wasn't, then something was hiding inside the disguise. The last photo froze me. A thin streak of blue-white light at the coma's edge, like an engine plume caught mid-thrust. My computer pinged with another encrypted message. Same anonymous sender. "We need to meet. Tomorrow. Proof it's not a comet." The story of Atlas split the world in two. On television, NASA spokespeople smiled into the cameras, assuring the public that everything was ordinary. "Textbook cometary behavior," they repeated, as though the phrase itself could erase doubt. The European Space Agency echoed the line, waving graphs and models that painted Atlas as just another rock covered in ice. But outside the press rooms, the cracks showed. Independent labs leaked reports, strange emission patterns repeating like clockwork. Amateur astronomers compared notes online and swore the object's brightness didn't fade naturally but pulsed, as if on a cycle. The internet caught fire. One camp insisted it was a relic probe, maybe abandoned, maybe not. Another raved about nuclear-powered engines disguised as comet jets. Religious groups preached it was a sign of judgment. Conspiracy forums declared it the vanguard of an invasion. Talk shows filled with shouting experts, each claiming certainty while their eyes betrayed doubt. And through it all, the object kept moving closer. At a closed-door session I managed to slip into, the divide was even sharper. Half the scientists dismissed every anomaly as observational error, nothing more. The other half leaned forward, voices low, admitting the evidence didn't fit any natural model they knew. One physicist argued it could be venting in a strange rhythm. Another cut him off. Then explain the velocity change. The room erupted, papers slapped against tables, voices rising. Some demanded the data be buried to prevent panic. Others whispered it was already too late. A woman near the front muttered, "We're watching it steer like it knows where it's going." The projector showed the truth in a thin, glowing line of numbers. Atlas had shifted course, not a random push from sunlight or gas, but a correction. Subtle, precise, deliberate. I felt the hair rise on the back of my neck. Afterward, I lingered near the exit. Two men in suits whispered near the door. I caught fragments. Public panic. Containment strategy? Cold Lantern on standby. When they noticed me, the conversation died instantly. Later that night, my encrypted inbox chimed again. Vega, my anonymous contact, sent only 6 words. It's adjusting course towards something. No coordinates, no explanation, just that. I stared until the screen blurred, pulse hammering in my ears. Atlas wasn't just passing through, it was steering. Another drop followed seconds later, GPS coordinates in the desert. A note below them read, "Meet me, tomorrow night, proof." The desert swallowed sound. By the time I reached the coordinates Vega had sent, the city lights were a faint smear on the horizon, and the only glow came from the stars. The air was cold, the kind of cold that pressed into your chest and made you aware of every heartbeat. A single figure stood by a rusted radio tower. No lights, no vehicle in sight, just him and the black case at his feet. "You came," he said, voice rough. No name, no greeting. "Are you Vega?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he popped the case and pulled out a hardened drive. "Satellite telemetry, infrared from military birds. They won't admit it, but they've been tracking Atlas since the first anomaly." On the small screen, images flickered, bursts of energy leaving the object in clean intervals, like a beacon. Spectral analysis showed sharp lines that didn't match any chemical exhaust. "This isn't venting gas," Vega said. "It's power, controlled. Someone, or something, is throttling it." I wanted to argue, but the data was merciless. The bursts weren't random, they were in sequence. Ordered. "Why tell me?" I asked. "Because they'll bury it," Vega hissed, "and when it changes course again, no one will be ready." A sound cracked the night, distant at first, then closer. The whine of turbines, drones, twin red lights pierced the dark sky, sweeping across the sand. A third joined, then a fourth, their beams cutting through the black like searchlights. The ground vibrated faintly as they closed in, like mechanical predators circling prey. Vega shoved the drive into my hands. "Run! Don't stop! If they catch you, it dies with you!" Before I could protest, he bolted toward the tower, waving his arms, drawing the machines away. Their lights swerved, chasing him into the skeletal frame. A burst of blinding white flared, followed by silence. I hit the dirt, lungs burning, clutching the drive like a live grenade. My phone buzzed. An automated signal had already triggered, encrypted backup. Vega had planned for this moment, even his own disappearance. I didn't dare look back. The desert roared with the whine of engines sweeping overhead. Somewhere above, Atlas drifted across the heavens, its plume pulsing like a heartbeat, steady and alive. Not a comet, not anymore. The drive felt heavier the longer I carried it. Back in my apartment, I slid every lock, drew the curtains and plugged the device into a secure terminal I hadn't touched in years. The files opened in bursts of coded reports, satellite captures, analysis charts, each one worse than the last. Energy bursts catalogued in dozens of intervals, not random but patterned. Reports describing radiation spikes so precise they could only be engineered. And then blueprints, not schematics drawn by human hands, but three-dimensional reconstructions generated from scattered data. Shapes forming angles no comet should produce. The words stamped across the header chilled me more than anything. Interstellar Vehicle Contact Protocols. I leaned back, palms damp, heart hammering. If this was real, then Atlas wasn't a mystery to them. It was an event they had prepared for. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Could have been anything, or it could have been for me. I scrolled further. A hidden subfolder blinked red, its title, Responses. Inside were contingency drafts, plans for martial law under cover of solar flare readiness, evacuation routes for key officials, orders for communications blackouts. The final file was encrypted but labeled clearly enough, First Contact Silence Doctrine. They weren't planning to announce discovery, they were planning to bury it. On my desk, my phone buzzed, another encrypted message. The signal just repeated, structured, mathematical. They're speaking. The question is, do we answer? The cursor blinked as I hovered over the keyboard. My reflection stared back from the dark screen. pale and drawn. If I hit upload, the world would know. People would riot, governments would fracture, the markets would collapse overnight, religion would splinter. And yet, there would be no going back. If I stayed silent, the truth would rot here with me, guarded by men in black suits and acronyms. And Atlas, whatever it was, would continue pulsing, steering, watching. I thought of Vega running into the desert night with machines screaming after him. I thought of the trembling scientists choking on secrets they dared not publish. I thought of the plume in the sky, beating like a heart, each pulse a question hammering against the void. Were we alone? Or had someone already found us? My finger hovered over the enter key, every second stretching into eternity. Somewhere far above, Atlas sent another signal, 3 long pulses, 1 short, a rhythm that was too deliberate to ignore. The choice wasn't just mine anymore, it was humanity's, and I had seconds to decide. You have been listening to 3i Atlas, produced and adapted for audio narration by PastNowRead. Stories that need to be told. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@pastnowread.com. Please subscribe, like, and hit that bell for future updates. If you like this story, stay tuned for the next episode each Thursday evening. Follow for more. If you like our stories, please tag with someone who may also like PastNowRead, stories that need to be told. Thank you. All content and images are copyrighted by Phone House, LLC, 2025, all rights reserved.